Elena's hands pressed hard against the rotting wooden door, her voice breaking through the howling wind. "Please, please open. My baby. I can't lose my baby. Not like this." The door gave way. She collapsed inside rain-soaked, trembling, 7 months pregnant, alone in a structure that should not exist. A wagon transformed into a cabin, untouched for over a century. Waiting. What she would find beneath these floorboards would change everything she understood about loss, about legacy, about why some things survive when everything else falls apart. Subscribe to this channel and stay until the very end of this story. Comment below which city you're watching from. Let me see how far this journey has traveled. This is the story of Elena Hartwell, and the house that waited 140 years for her to arrive. The phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Elena grabbed it without opening her eyes. "Hello, you coming? Mrs. Hartwell, this is Officer Reynolds, Oregon State Police." She sat up. David's side of the bed was empty, still warm. "There's been an accident on Highway 26. Your husband's vehicle—" "Wait, what?" "A truck crossed the median. Ma'am, I'm very sorry. Your husband didn't survive the impact." Elena laughed. Actually laughed. "That's impossible. He left 20 minutes ago. He's getting coffee right now. He always stops at the place on 5th Street. "Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to listen." "No, you listen. My husband kissed me goodbye at 6:15. He put his hand on my belly and told our daughter he loved her. That was 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes. He's fine. You have the wrong person." "Ma'am, check your records again. Check the license plate. You made a mistake." "The identification has been confirmed. I'm so sorry." Elena hung up. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She dialed David's number. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. "Hey, this is David. Leave a message and I'll call you back." "David?" Her voice cracked on his name. "David, someone just called. They said something crazy. Call me back, please. Right now, I need to hear your voice." She hung up, dialed again. "Hey, this is David. Leave a message." "David, please pick up. This isn't funny. I'm scared. The baby's kicking and I'm scared and I need you to call me back." Again. "Hey, this is David. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You always answer, even in meetings. Even when you're not supposed to, you always answer for me." Again. "Hey, this is David, please. She called 47 times that morning. 47 messages. Her voice went from desperate to pleading to bargaining to something that didn't sound human anymore. At 11:43 a.m., the doorbell rang. Elena looked through the window. David's mother stood on the porch. Her face was red. Her hands were trembling. She was crying before Elena opened the door. "No," Elena said. Margaret reached for her. "Elena. No, don't say it. Don't you dare say it." "He's gone, sweetheart. Our David is gone." Elena's legs gave out. Margaret caught her, lowered her to the floor, held her while she screamed. The sound that came out wasn't grief. It was something older, something primal, the sound of a soul being torn in half. "I talked to him this morning." Elena gasped between sobs. "He was right here. He was right here in this bed. He told Lily he loved her. He told me to have a good day. How can he be gone? How can someone be here and then just not be here?" Margaret had no answer. There was no answer. The funeral happened 5 days later. Elena stood beside the casket in a black dress stretched tight over her pregnant belly. People approached in an endless stream, hands clasped, voices murmured, words that meant nothing. "He was such a good man. Thank you for coming. He's in a better place now." "I appreciate that. At least you'll have the baby. A piece of him." Elena's jaw tightened. "Yes, at least I'll have that." David's brother Michael appeared at her elbow. He looked like David. Same eyes, same jawline. Looking at him felt like being stabbed, and she couldn't look away. "Elena, I need to talk to you." "Not now, Michael." "It's about the accident." Her heart stopped. "What about it?" Michael pulled her aside, away from the crowd. His voice dropped low. "I talked to a witness, a woman who saw everything from the shoulder. The police said the truck driver fell asleep. That's what the report says, but this woman told me something different. She said the truck didn't drift, Elena. It turned, deliberately, like the driver was aiming for David's car." Elena grabbed his arm. "That doesn't make sense. Who would want to hurt David? He taught high school history. He coached baseball. He didn't have enemies." "I don't know, but I think we should investigate." "Investigate what? He's dead. Nothing we find will bring him back." "Don't you want to know the truth?" "The truth?" Elena's voice rose. Several guests turned to look. She lowered it again. The truth is my husband is in that box. The truth is I'm going to raise our daughter alone. The truth is the nursery we painted together will never see the father who picked the color. That's the only truth that matters. She walked away, but Michael's words followed her. They wouldn't let go. That night, alone in the house that no longer felt like home, Elena found herself standing in David's office. She hadn't entered this room since he died. His desk was exactly as he'd left it, papers stacked, coffee mug with the cold remnants of his last cup. Reading glasses folded beside the lamp, she sat in his chair. It still smelled like him. "What were you doing, David?" she whispered. "What weren't you telling me?" She opened the top drawer. Standard supplies, pens, sticky notes, paper clips, second drawer. Files from school, student essays, lesson plans, third drawer, locked. Elena frowned. In 14 years of marriage, she'd never seen David lock anything. She searched for a key, checked his other drawers, his coat pockets, his briefcase. Nothing. She grabbed a letter opener and pried the lock. It gave way easier than expected. Inside was a single folder, unmarked. She opened it. Photographs, documents, handwritten notes in David's careful script. Elena's blood ran cold. The photographs showed men she didn't recognize. Some in suits, some in casual clothes. All taken from a distance as if David had been watching them without their knowledge. The documents were copies of financial records, transactions, account numbers, names that meant nothing to her, and the notes. Pages and pages of notes. Following the money, shell companies traced to Whitmore Holdings, connection to school board contracts, $2.3 million unaccounted for. Someone knows I'm looking. Car followed me Tuesday. Same black SUV, license plate partial 7X9. The last entry was dated the day before David died. Meeting with source tomorrow morning. If something happens to me, Elena needs to find this. She needs to know. The safe deposit box at First National. Key is in Lily's music box. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, sweetheart. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect both of you. I love you. I love her. Whatever happens, remember that. Elena couldn't breathe. David hadn't just died. David had been murdered, and he'd known it was coming. She tore through the closet until she found the music box they'd bought for Lily's nursery. It played You Are My Sunshine. Elena had wondered why David insisted on that specific one. Now she knew. She opened it. The melody started, and there taped to the inside lid was a small silver key. Elena held it in her palm. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. What did you find, David? What did you find that was worth killing for? The next morning, Elena went to First National Bank. She showed her ID, presented the key. The clerk led her to the vault. Box 7749. Inside was a flash drive and a sealed envelope addressed to her. She opened the envelope first. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you. I never wanted to leave our daughter. 3 months ago, I stumbled onto something I shouldn't have. Corruption at the school board. Money being funneled through construction contracts. People in power who will do anything to stay in power. I thought I could expose them. I thought I could do the right thing. I was naive. They know who I am now. They've made threats. Subtle ones, but I understand what they mean. I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth, and because I need you to be careful. The flash drive contains everything. Names, dates, evidence. Take it to the FBI field office in Portland. Ask for Agent Sarah Chen. She's expecting contact from someone connected to me. Please don't try to handle this yourself. These people are dangerous. They've already proven what they're willing to do. Take care of our daughter. Tell her about me. Tell her I loved her before I ever met her. Tell her I would have moved mountains to see her grow up. And you, my Elena, my heart, my home, you are the strongest person I've ever known. You'll survive this. You'll thrive. You'll give Lily the life she deserves. I love you, past death, past everything. Forever, David. Elena sat in the bank vault and cried until she couldn't cry anymore. Then she drove to Portland. Agent Sarah Chen was expecting her. She took the flash drive. She took the letter. She took Elena's statement. We've been building this case for 2 years, Chen said. Your husband reached out to us 8 weeks ago. He was brave, Mrs. Hartwell. What he gathered may be enough to bring these people down. Will they be arrested? I can't make promises, but I can tell you we're close. And the man who killed him, the truck driver, we're investigating. If your husband was targeted, we'll find proof. Elena drove home in a daze. The world looked different now, sharper, more dangerous. David hadn't just been a teacher, he'd been a fighter, a man who saw injustice and refused to look away, and it had cost him everything. That night, Elena sat in the nursery. The walls were painted soft yellow. David's choice. He'd said it reminded him of sunshine. "Your daddy was a hero," she told her belly. "He found bad people doing bad things and he tried to stop them. That's why he's not here. But he loved you, Lily. He loved you so much he was willing to risk everything to make the world safer for you." Lily kicked 3 times, short, quick, like a code. Elena remembered something, a habit David had. Whenever he left the house, he would tap her belly 3 times. Their secret signal, their private language. "I'll be back," he would say. 3 taps. "I promise." Now Lily was doing it, as if David had taught her somehow, as if he was still here, still communicating, still promising. Elena pressed her hand against the kicks. "I hear you, baby girl. I hear both of you." The weeks that followed were brutal. Elena cooperated with the FBI investigation. She answered questions, reviewed documents, identified photographs. The men in David's photos were connected to a state senator. The financial records traced to contracts worth tens of millions. The corruption ran deeper than anyone had imagined. But the investigation moved slowly. Evidence needed verification. Warrants required approval. Justice Elena learned was not swift. Meanwhile, the nursery sat empty. The house grew quieter. Elena's grief transformed into something harder, sharper. Not sadness anymore. Fury. Her mother called constantly. "Come home to California, sell the house, start over." "I'm not running, Mom." "It's not running. It's surviving." No, running is exactly what they want. They took David because he wouldn't stay quiet. I'm not going to stay quiet either. "Elena, you're 7 months pregnant. You're alone. What if something happens? Then I'll handle it." How? The same way I've handled everything else, by refusing to give up. Her therapist suggested movement. Your body is frozen in grief. Sometimes physical motion helps process what the mind refuses to accept. What kind of movement? Walking, hiking, something that engages your body without demanding too much from your thoughts. Elena remembered a trail David had mentioned once, an old frontier path in the Pacific Northwest. He'd wanted to take her there before the baby came. "One last adventure," he'd said. "Just the 2 of us, before we become 3. They never made the trip. Maybe it was time. Elena found the Clearwater Corridor online. Safe, unremarkable, forgettable. 3 days of solitude before returning to the chaos of investigation and grief. She packed carefully. Extra water, extra food, emergency supplies. Paper maps, because David always insisted on them. "Technology fails," she could hear him saying. "Paper doesn't need batteries." She drove 4 hours to a cabin near the trailhead. Small, simple, anonymous. A place to exist without being noticed. The first night sleep wouldn't come. Elena lay in the unfamiliar bed, one hand on her belly, staring at the ceiling. "Are you awake, Lily?" A kick, yes. "I can't sleep either. Too quiet here. Too much space in my head." Another kick. "Your daddy would know what to say. He always knew. Even when everything was falling apart, he had this way of making me believe it would be okay." Elena closed her eyes. She could almost hear David's voice. "You're stronger than you think, Elena. You've always been stronger than you think." "I don't feel strong. I feel tired. I feel scared. I feel like I'm failing before I even start." "You're not failing. You're fighting. There's a difference." "What if I can't do this? What if I can't raise her alone? What if I can't be enough?" "You are enough. You've always been enough. I fell in love with you because of who you are, not who you thought you should be." Elena opened her eyes. The voice faded. The room was empty, but she felt less alone. At 2 a.m. the nightmare came. David's face, the truck bearing down, metal crushing metal, his voice calling her name. "Elena, Elena, Elena." She woke gasping, drenched in sweat. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "We're okay," she told Lily. "We're okay. Just a dream." But it wasn't just a dream. It was memory. It was truth. It was the moment her life split into before and after. Elena couldn't stay in the cabin. The walls pressed too close. The silence screamed too loud. At 4 a.m. she made a decision. She would hike. Not tomorrow. Now. She would walk until the sun rose and her body remembered how to exist without David. She dressed in layers, checked her pack 3 times, left a note with her planned route. The forest waited outside, dark and indifferent. She stepped into it. For 2 hours, Elena walked without thinking. The rhythm of her footsteps replaced the chaos in her mind. Step, breathe, step, breathe, step. The trail rose and fell. Trees passed. Time dissolved. By sunrise, she had covered 3 miles. She rested in a small clearing, eating an energy bar, watching light transform the forest. This is where we are, Lily. Somewhere that doesn't know our pain. Somewhere that doesn't care about our story. There's something peaceful about that. 3 kicks. Their signal. I know. We keep moving. She continued. By noon, Elena realized she'd traveled too far. Her back ached. Her feet burned. But she couldn't turn around. Not yet. Just a little further. Just over this ridge. The ridge revealed another ridge. Then another. At 1 p.m., she checked her phone. No signal. At 1:30, she checked her map. The junction she expected wasn't there. At 2 p.m., Elena admitted what she'd been denying for an hour. She was lost. Okay, don't panic. You've been lost before. You just need to backtrack. But her footprints had faded. The soft ground held no memory of her passage. She turned in a slow circle. Every direction looked identical. Trees and shadow and nothing familiar. Think, Elena. You're smart. David always said you were the smartest person he knew. The trail followed an old wagon road. That meant it paralleled the hillside. If she kept the slope on her left, eventually she'd find the main path or a road. She started walking. 1 hour, no trail. 2 hours, no landmarks. 3 hours, nothing but forest. Elena's water was half gone. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. The baby felt heavier with every step. Hello, she called out. Is anyone there? I need help, please. Her voice disappeared into the trees without echo. Hello, anyone, please. No response. Elena leaned against a tree, fighting tears. 7 months pregnant, lost, alone, no phone signal, evening approaching. David, I need you. I don't know what to do. You always knew what to do. She closed her eyes. For a moment she could feel him, his presence, his warmth. You know exactly what to do, Elena. You just don't want to do it alone. I can't do it alone. Yes, you can. You've been doing it for 2 months. You'll do it for 20 more years, because that's who you are. That's who you've always been. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. Now use it. Move. Elena opened her eyes, wiped her face, pushed off the tree. Okay, Lily, we keep going. We find shelter before dark. We survive the night. Tomorrow we try again. 3 kicks. That's my girl. At 3 p.m., the clouds that had lingered all morning gathered into something threatening. The temperature dropped. The wind picked up. Elena walked faster. At 3:30, thunder rolled through the valley. At 3:45, the first drops fell. No, not now. Please, not now. The rain intensified. Light sprinkles became sheets. Her jacket failed within minutes. Water ran down her face into her eyes, soaking through to her skin. She kept moving. The forest transformed. Streams appeared. The ground turned to mud. Branches whipped in the wind. At 4:15, Elena fell. Her knee hit rock. Pain exploded through her leg. She cried out, clutching the injury. Get up. Her own voice harsh. Get up right now. Your daughter needs you. She got up. The knee screamed with every step. She ignored it, ignored the cold, ignored everything except the need to keep moving. Lightning split the sky. Thunder followed immediately. Elena pushed through underbrush, thorns tearing at her clothes. Branches scraped her hands bloody. She emerged into a clearing and stopped. Something stood at the far edge. Something that didn't belong. A structure. Wooden. Old. Impossible. She staggered toward it. Details emerged through the rain. Walls, a roof, a door, and beneath it all, wheels. Iron-rimmed wheels half buried in earth. A wagon. Transformed into shelter. Right here in the middle of nowhere. Please. Elena's hands found the door. Please be real. Please be open. The door resisted, swollen with moisture, warped with age. She pulled harder. Please, please open. My baby. I can't lose my baby. Not like this. The door gave way. Elena fell through the opening, collapsing onto a floor that was somehow dry. Rain poured outside. Thunder crashed. Lightning flashed. Inside there was only stillness. She lay gasping, trembling, one hand pressed to her belly. Lily kicked. Once, twice, 3 times. We made it, Elena whispered. We made it, baby girl. She pushed herself up slowly, looking around the strange space. Compact but organized. Shelves lined the walls. A stove sat in the center. A fold-down table, a built-in bench. Everything arranged with intention. Everything preserved with care. And something else. The smell of old wood. The faint trace of ash. And beneath those, something harder to name. Presence. Purpose. Patience. This place had been waiting. Not for anyone. For someone specific. Elena's hand found a marking on the wall near the stove. She traced it with her fingers. Words, carved into the wood, faded but legible. If you found this place, you were meant to. Her heart stopped. She read it again. Then again. If you found this place, you were meant to. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Elena understood. This was not an accident. This was not coincidence. Something had guided her here. Something that had been waiting over 100 years. And the night was just beginning. Elena pressed her back against the wall and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The technique David had taught her during her first trimester when the nausea overwhelmed everything. Count with me, he would say. 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out. You're not dying, you just feel like you are. She wasn't dying now either, but she felt like it. The storm screamed outside rain, hammering the walls with a fury that seemed personal. Wind found every gap, every crack, whistling through in sharp bursts that made the structure groan. But the walls held, the roof held. Whatever this place was, whoever had built it, they had built it to last. Okay, Lily. Elena's voice came out hoarse. We're inside, we're dry, we're safe. That's step 1. 3 kicks, their signal. I know. Step 2 is figuring out where the hell we are. She pushed herself up slowly, testing her injured knee. It protested with a sharp stab of pain, but it held her weight. Not broken, maybe sprained. She could work with sprained. The interior of the wagon house was darker now than when she'd first collapsed through the door. The storm had swallowed what remained of daylight. Elena dug through her pack with trembling fingers until she found her headlamp. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing details she'd missed in her desperate entrance. Shelves lined every available wall space. Not empty shelves. Items arranged with almost obsessive precision. Jars, boxes, bundles wrapped in cloth that had yellowed with age. Everything coated in dust, but nothing scattered. Nothing chaotic. Someone had lived here. Someone organized. Someone careful. Elena limped toward the stove in the center of the room. Cast iron. Heavy. The kind that had been built to survive generations. She ran her fingers across the surface. Cold. Dead. But intact. If I can get this working, she murmured, we'll have heat. We'll survive the night. She checked the ash drawer. Compacted gray residue. Old but dry. The flue pipe disappeared into the roof at an angle that suggested careful engineering. Elena had taken a wilderness survival course 3 years ago. David's idea. You never know when you might need it, he'd said. She'd rolled her eyes at the time. Now she thanked him silently. She gathered kindling from her pack. Emergency fire starter. Dry leaves she'd collected automatically during her hike. Muscle memory from training kicked in. But when she struck the spark, the flame caught and died. Caught and died. Smoke curled upward, then reversed, flooding the small space. Elena coughed, eyes watering. No, come on, come on! She extinguished the attempt and sat back, frustrated. The flue must be blocked, or the pressure was wrong, or she was doing something stupid that her exhausted brain couldn't identify. That's when she noticed the markings, near the stove carved into the wood with deliberate strokes. Not decoration. Words. Elena leaned closer, wiping dust away with her sleeve. Storm pressure. Close lower vent halfway. Open side intake full. Wait for draw before adding fuel. Instructions. Left by whoever had lived here. A conversation with the future. You brilliant bastard, Elena whispered. She found the vents, adjusted them exactly as described. Struck the spark again. The flame caught, held. Smoke rose, hesitated, then was pulled steadily upward into the flue. Heat began to spread almost immediately. Elena held her hands toward the stove, watching them shake in the flickering light. It worked, Lily. It worked. Someone who lived here 100 years ago just saved our lives. She sat on the floor beside the stove, letting warmth seep into her frozen limbs. Her clothes were soaked. She should change, should eat, should do a dozen practical things. Instead, she found herself staring at those carved words. Who writes instructions into wood? Who thinks that far ahead? Who imagines that someday, maybe decades later, maybe a century later, someone else might need to know how to light this exact stove in this exact weather? Someone who understood that survival wasn't about luck. It was about preparation, about leaving something behind that mattered. David would have appreciated that. David had been exactly that kind of person. The thought triggered a memory. Sharp. Unwelcome. "Promise me something," David had said 3 months before he died. They were lying in bed, her head on his chest, his hand tracing circles on her belly. "Anything. If something ever happens to me, don't." Elena had pressed her finger to his lips. "Don't talk like that. Elena, listen, if something happens, you keep going. For her. Promise me." "Nothing's going to happen?" "Promise me anyway." She'd promised, half-heartedly, dismissively. Because David was healthy and young and careful, and nothing was going to happen. 3 months later, a truck crossed the median. "I'm trying," Elena said aloud to the empty room, to the memory, to whoever might be listening. "I'm trying to keep going. But you made it look so easy, David, and it's not. It's not easy at all." Lily kicked. "Once, firm, insistent. I know. Self-pity won't keep us warm. Your father would say the same thing." Elena forced herself to stand, forced herself to strip off her wet outer layers and hang them near the stove, forced herself to dig through her pack for dry clothes and the emergency blanket she always carried. Practical steps. That's how you survived. One thing at a time. As she changed her headlamp beam swept across the shelves again, something caught her eye. A shape that didn't match the others. She moved closer. A book. Or what had once been a book. Leather cover cracked and faded. Pages yellowed to the color of old bone. Elena reached for it, then stopped. This felt different from using the stove. The stove was survival. This was intrusion. "I'm sorry," she said to whoever had left it. "I need to understand where I am." She picked it up. The leather was soft from age, almost fragile. She carried it back to the stove and sat down, angling her headlamp to illuminate the pages. The handwriting inside was dense, deliberate, slanted slightly to the right. The ink had faded in places but remained legible. A journal, personal, private, and over a century old. Elena began to read. September 3rd, 1879. We have stopped. Margaret's fever returned this morning worse than before. The children are exhausted. I made the decision at noon. We go no further until she recovers. If she recovers, God help us all. Elena's breath caught. She turned the page. September 7th, 1879. Built a temporary shelter using the wagon as foundation. The nights grow colder. Winter will come early this year. I can feel it in my bones. Must work faster. September 15th, 1879. Margaret spoke today. First words in a week. She asked about the children. She asked if we would make it to Oregon. I told her yes. I pray I did not lie. September 28th, 1879. Walls complete. Roof holds. The wagon is no longer a wagon. It is a home. Temporary. Permanent. I no longer know which. Does it matter? Elena flipped through more entries. Weeks became months. The entries documented everything. Improvements to the structure, hunting successes and failures, the children's health, Margaret's slow, uncertain recovery, and then December. December 19th, 1879. The fever has returned. Worse this time. Margaret cannot keep food down. Cannot stand. Her eyes are glassy. She knows. I see it in her face. She knows she will not survive the winter. Elena's hand trembled. She didn't want to read more. She had to read more. December 24th, 1879. She asked me to promise her something tonight. Take care of them, she said. Samuel and Anna, whatever happens, take care of them. I promised. What else could I do? December 25th, 1879. Margaret passed this morning, peacefully, in her sleep. The children do not understand. I barely understand myself. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of partnership, gone in a single breath. How does the world continue turning? How does the sun still rise? Elena was crying now, tears streaming down her face, dripping onto the ancient pages. She wiped them away carefully, terrified of damaging the words. This man, this stranger from another century, he had lost his wife. He had faced the impossible task of continuing alone, just like her. I understand, Elena whispered. God, I understand. She forced herself to read on. January 4th, 1880. I buried Margaret beneath the great fir to the east. She always loved how the light fell there in the morning. I marked the grave with stones. I told the children their mother was watching over us now. Samuel asked if she could see us from heaven. I said yes. I hope I was right. January 20th, 1880. Snow. Endless snow. But the house holds. The stove works. The children are fed. We will survive this winter, for Margaret, for the promise I made. February 15th, 1880. Spring approaches, must make a decision soon. Continue west, or stay. The children have adapted to this place. Anna calls it home. But Oregon was the plan. Oregon was the dream. The entries continued through February into March, then April, then May. The man stayed. He improved the wagon house, built additions, reinforced weak points, created something permanent from what was meant to be temporary, and then June 1880, the entry that changed everything. June 3rd, 1880. A wagon train passed through today, heading west. I spoke with the wagon master. A good man, trustworthy. He offered to take Samuel and Anna with them, to family waiting in Oregon, Margaret's sister. I did not know what to say. I am not ready. But the children deserve better than this forest. They deserve the life we promised them. June 5th, 1880. I have decided. Samuel and Anna will go with the wagon train. They will reach Oregon by autumn. They will have a real home, a real family. I will stay behind, gather the remaining documents, follow when I can. Elena's heart clenched. He had sent his children away, given them their best chance, stayed behind alone. June 8th, 1880. They left this morning. Anna cried. Samuel tried not to. I held them both and told them I would see them soon. Before Christmas, I said. I will be there before Christmas. They waved until the wagon train disappeared around the ridge. Then I came back inside and could not stop shaking. The next entry was 3 weeks later. June 29th, 1880. Illness, fever, my turn now. Cannot keep food down. The irony is not lost on me. I have hidden the documents and valuables beneath the floor. If I do not recover, perhaps someone will find them. Perhaps they will reach my children. Perhaps this place will mean something to someone else. Elena set the journal down. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knew how this story ended. The man had not recovered, had not made it to Oregon, had died alone in this wagon house he'd built with his own hands. But his children had survived. They had reached family. They had lived. He did it, Elena said to Lily. He kept his promise. Not the way he wanted, but he kept it. 3 kicks. Elena picked up the journal again, searching for more. A name, a date, something to connect this story to reality. She found it on the inside cover, written in the same careful hand, but fresher, as if added later. This journal belongs to Thomas Mercer. If found, please deliver to Samuel and Anna Mercer, care of Martha Evans, Portland, Oregon. They are my children. This is their inheritance. Thomas Mercer. Elena said the name aloud, letting it fill the small space. Thomas Mercer. This was his home, his refuge, his tomb, and now, over 100 years later, it was hers. The storm showed no sign of weakening. Elena checked her watch. 7:43 p.m. The night would be long. She added fuel to the stove, carefully following Thomas's instructions, then returned to the journal. There were more pages, more entries, and she needed to understand all of it. But first, something nagged at her. A detail from earlier. Hidden the documents and valuables beneath the floor. Elena stood, ignoring her protesting knee, and began to search. The floor was solid, planks fitted together with obvious skill. She walked slowly, testing each section. Near the bench, her foot felt a slight give, a hollow sound where others had been solid. She knelt, running her fingers along the seams. One plank was slightly different, shorter, with edges that didn't quite match. Elena pried at it. Her fingernails scraped. The wood resisted. She grabbed the letter opener from her pack, worked it into the gap, pushed. The plank lifted. Beneath it was a cavity, dry, carefully sealed with some kind of resin that had preserved the contents against moisture and time. Elena reached inside. Her fingers touched cloth. Wrapped bundles. She pulled them out one by one, laying them on the floor beside the stove. The first bundle contained coins. Silver. Heavy. Worn smooth from handling, but unmistakable. The second held jewelry. A wedding ring. A woman's necklace. A small locket that when Elena opened it contained a tiny portrait. A woman's face. Margaret, she assumed. Preserved forever in miniature. The third bundle was papers. Folded and refolded. Fragile. She opened them with extreme care. Land deeds. Letters of credit. Legal documents with stamps and signatures and official seals. And beneath everything, one final item. An envelope sealed with wax addressed in Thomas's handwriting. To whoever finds this place. Elena stared at it for a long moment. The seal had never been broken. This letter had waited over 100 years for someone to read it. She was that someone. Her fingers trembled as she broke the wax. The letter inside was brief, direct, heartbreaking. If you are reading this, I am gone. The fever has taken me as it took my Margaret. I pray this house has served you as it served us. I pray you found shelter when you needed it. I ask only one thing. These documents belong to my children, Samuel and Anna Mercer. I sent them west with a wagon train in June of 1880. They were traveling to their Aunt Martha Evans in Portland, Oregon. If you can find them, or their descendants, please deliver what I have left behind. It is all I have to give, all that remains of our family's dreams. I built this house to survive, not for myself, for whoever came next. The human spirit endures. I believe that. I have to believe that. Take what you need, leave what should remain, and know that even in darkness we build toward light. Thomas Mercer, July 1880. Elena held the letter against her chest and cried. Not from grief this time, not from exhaustion, from recognition. Thomas had written these words while dying, alone, knowing he would never see his children again, and still he had thought of others. Still he had hoped, still he had built toward light. I'll find them, Elena said aloud. I'll find your family, Thomas. I'll make sure they know what you did. I'll make sure they know how much you loved them. It was a promise, made to a dead man in a house that time forgot. Elena had learned not to make promises lightly, but this one she meant. The night deepened. Elena rationed her food, eating only enough to keep her strength up. She fed the stove. She read more of the journal. She talked to Lily about everything and nothing. Your father would have loved this place, she said at one point. He was obsessed with history, used to drag me to every museum within 100 miles. The past isn't dead, he would say. It's not even past. Some writer said that. I can't remember who. 3 kicks. Faulkner. I think it was Faulkner. David would know. David always knew. She dozed in fragments, waking often to tend the fire. Each time she woke, she checked that the walls still held, that the storm still raged, that she was still alive. At 2:17 a.m., something changed. The wind shifted, the hammering rain softened, the constant pressure against the structure eased. Elena sat up, listening. The storm was breaking. Not gone, but weakening. By morning, she might be able to move. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Reluctance. This place had saved her life, had shared its secrets, had connected her to a man who had faced everything she was facing and had refused to give up. Leaving felt like abandonment. That's stupid, she told herself. It's a building. It doesn't have feelings. But Thomas Mercer had put his feelings into every beam, every plank, every carved instruction. This wasn't just a building. It was a message, a legacy, a piece of someone's soul preserved in wood and iron. Elena made a decision. She wouldn't just leave. She would come back. She would bring people who could document this place, preserve it, honor it. Thomas Mercer would not be forgotten. At 5:00 a.m., the first gray light filtered through the small window. Elena stood, stretched, tested her knee. Better. Still painful, but better. She gathered the documents carefully, wrapped them in waterproof layers from her pack, tucked them against her body where they would be protected. The valuables she left in their hiding place. Sealed the floor panel exactly as she had found it. Those would stay until someone with proper authority could retrieve them. But the letter. Thomas's final letter. That she kept. I'm taking this, she said to the empty room. I hope you don't mind. I need to show people. I need them to understand. No response. Of course, no response. But Elena imagined she felt something. Approval. Peace. The sense of a burden finally shared. She packed her thing, checked the stove one last time, ensured the fire was completely dead. Then she stood at the door, hand on the latch, looking back. Thank you, Thomas, for building something that lasted, for leaving instructions, for believing someone would come. She paused. You were right, by the way. Even in darkness, we build toward light. I didn't understand that before. I understand it now. 3 kicks from Lily, strong, certain. Elena smiled through fresh tears. I know, baby girl, I know. She opened the door. The forest had been transformed. Branches down. Mud everywhere. New streams cutting through what had been solid ground. But the storm had passed, and somewhere out there a path led home. Elena stepped outside, closed the door behind her, and began to walk. She did not look back again. She didn't need to. Thomas Mercer's house would wait. It had waited 100 years. It could wait a little longer. The journey out took 6 hours. Elena moved slowly, carefully, following the natural contours of the land the way David had taught her years ago. Downhill meant water. Water meant streams. Streams meant valleys. Valleys meant civilization. Her knee ached with every step. Her body screamed for rest. But she kept moving. 3 steps. Pause. Breathe. 3 more steps. Almost there, Lily. Almost there. At 11:00 a.m. she found the trail. Not the one she had lost. A different one. Wider. More maintained. With actual markers pointing toward a trailhead. Elena laughed. Actually laughed. Standing alone in the wilderness covered in mud, 7 months pregnant, clutching century-old documents against her chest. We made it! Lily, we made it! She followed the trail for another 2 hours. At 1:15 p.m. she emerged into a parking lot. Her car wasn't there. Wrong trailhead. But there was a ranger station, occupied, lights on, people inside. Elena walked through the door and collapsed into the first chair she saw. The ranger behind the desk jumped up. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need medical attention? I got lost, Elena said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, hoarse, distant. In the storm. I found shelter, an old wagon house. I need to tell someone. I need to tell everyone. The ranger was already on the radio calling for assistance. Someone brought her water. Someone else wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Elena clutched the documents against her chest and refused to let go. There's a man, she said. His name was Thomas Mercer. He died over 100 years ago, but he saved my life, and I made him a promise. The ranger looked at her like she might be delirious. Maybe she was, but the documents were real. The wagon house was real. Thomas Mercer's story was real, and Elena Hartwell had a promise to keep. The ranger station's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Elena sat in the hard plastic chair, blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, clutching a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Ma'am, the paramedics are on their way. The ranger, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, knelt beside her. You need to be checked out. You're 7 months pregnant and you just spent the night lost in a storm. I'm fine. With respect, you don't look fine. Elena almost laughed. I haven't looked fine in 3 months. This is just the latest version. Patricia's expression softened. Is there someone I can call, family, a friend? Elena thought about her mother. Thought about the conversation that would follow. The I told you so's. The demands that she come home immediately. My mother-in-law, Margaret Hartwell. She's in Portland. I'll get her number from you in a moment. First, can you tell me exactly where you found this shelter? Elena closed her eyes, trying to reconstruct the journey. I don't know. I was lost. I wandered for hours. It was somewhere deep in the forest off any marked trail. There was a clearing. The structure was at the edge. Can you describe it again? A wagon, an old frontier wagon that someone converted into a cabin, wooden walls built up around the original frame, iron-rimmed wheels half buried in the ground, a cast-iron stove inside, shelves everywhere, and underneath the floor... Elena touched the document still pressed against her chest. These. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Those look old. Over 100 years old. The man who built that shelter died there. His name was Thomas Mercer. He left everything behind for his children, but no one ever came to collect it. How do you know all this? He kept a journal. I read it. I know his whole story. Patricia stood processing this information. I need to make some calls. The County Historical Society will want to know about this. If what you're saying is true, this could be a significant find. It's true, every word. The paramedics arrived at 2:15 p.m. Elena submitted to their examination with the resignation of someone who knew arguing was pointless. Blood pressure elevated but stable. Baby's heartbeat strong. Knee sprained but not seriously damaged. Mild hypothermia that had mostly resolved. Dehydration. You need rest, the lead paramedic said. And fluids. And a proper meal. But overall, you're remarkably okay considering what you went through. My daughter kept me going. The paramedic smiled. She's a fighter. Takes after her mom. By 4:00 p.m., Margaret Hartwell arrived at the ranger station. She burst through the door, face pale with worry, and pulled Elena into a crushing embrace. Don't you ever do that again. Do you hear me? When they called and said you were lost in a storm, I thought... Her voice broke. I can't lose you too, Elena. I can't. I'm okay. We're okay. Margaret pulled back hands on Elena's face, examining her like she might find hidden damage. What were you thinking hiking alone 7 months pregnant in October? I was thinking I needed to move. I was thinking I couldn't breathe anymore in that house. I was thinking David would have wanted me to keep living. At her son's name, Margaret's expression crumpled. He would have wanted you to be safe. He would have wanted me to be brave. There's a difference. They drove back to Portland in Margaret's car. Elena's vehicle would be retrieved later. For now, she sat in the passenger seat, watching the landscape blur past, thinking about Thomas Mercer. I found something, Elena said quietly. In the forest, a structure, built by a man who died over 100 years ago. Margaret glanced at her. The ranger mentioned something about that. Old documents. More than documents, a whole story. A family that never made it to Oregon, children who were sent ahead, a father who stayed behind and never followed. That's sad. It's more than sad. It's important. He left everything for his children, but they never knew. They probably spent their whole lives thinking he abandoned them, and he didn't. He died trying to reach them. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Why does this matter so much to you? Elena turned to look at her mother-in-law. Because David left things behind too. For Lily. For me. And I almost missed them. If I hadn't found that locked drawer, if I hadn't gone to the bank, I would never have known what he was really doing. I would never have known he died trying to make the world safer. Elena? Thomas Mercer's children deserve to know the truth about their father, and someone needs to find them, their descendants. Someone needs to finish what he started. And you think that someone is you? I think I'm the one who found the house. I'm the one who made the promise, so yes, it has to be me. Margaret pulled into Elena's driveway at 7:30 p.m. The house looked the same as always. Lights off, empty, waiting for people who would never return. Stay with me tonight, Margaret said. Please, I don't want you to be alone. I need to be here. This is my home. This is where Lily will grow up. At least let me come in. Make sure you eat something. Make sure you actually sleep. Elena didn't argue. She was too tired to argue. Inside the house felt different. Not empty anymore. Crowded with ghosts. David's presence lingered in every corner, but now Thomas Mercer was there too. And Margaret. And Lily. When did I become someone who talks to dead people? Elena murmured as she sank onto the couch. What? Nothing. Just thinking out loud. Margaret made dinner. Simple pasta with sauce from a jar. Elena ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind racing through everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. At 9:00 p.m. her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Mrs. Hartwell, this is Agent Chen. Elena sat up straight. Agent Chen, I was going to call you. I found something. We need to meet. Tomorrow. There's been a development in your husband's case. Elena's heart stopped. What kind of development? I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you come to the field office at 10 a.m.? I'll be there. She hung up. Margaret was watching her with concern. FBI, Elena explained. Something's happened with David's case. Is that good or bad? I don't know. She wouldn't say. Sleep was impossible. Elena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Her hand rested on her belly, where Lily moved restlessly as if sensing her mother's anxiety. Your daddy was investigating bad people, Elena whispered. He found evidence. He was going to expose them, and someone killed him to keep him quiet. But the FBI has his evidence now, and maybe finally Tyler will get justice. 3 kicks, their signal. I know. Justice won't bring him back, but it might protect other people, other families. That matters too. At 3:00 a.m., Elena gave up on sleep entirely. She got up, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table with Thomas Mercer's journal. She had read most of it in the wagon house, but some pages remained. The final entries. The ones Thomas had written while dying. July 2nd, 1880. The fever burns. Cannot stand today. Cannot eat. The house holds, but I do not know how much longer I will. I think of Samuel. Of Anna. Of Margaret waiting for me in whatever comes after. Perhaps I will see her soon. Perhaps that is not so terrible. July 5th, 1880. Wrote letter for whoever finds this place. Hid the documents, the valuables, everything that matters. My children will have their inheritance even if I cannot deliver it myself. That is all I can do now. That is enough. It has to be enough. July 8th, 1880. Cannot write. Handshakes. Eyes blur. Forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me. The last entry. 3 words repeated. A prayer or a confession? Elena couldn't tell which. You have nothing to be forgiven for, she said aloud. You did everything right. You saved your children. You built something that lasted. And now someone found it. Someone will keep your promise. She closed the journal carefully and set it aside. At 9:30 a.m., Elena drove to the FBI field office in Portland. Her knee still ached, her body still exhausted, but none of that mattered. Agent Chen met her in the lobby. Same professional demeanor, same careful expression that revealed nothing. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Hartwell. Please follow me." They walked through security down a hallway into a small conference room. Another agent was already seated, older, gray-haired, hard eyes. "This is Agent Morrison," Chen said. "He's been leading the investigation into the corruption your husband uncovered." Morrison stood and shook Elena's hand. His grip was firm, businesslike. "Mrs. Hartwell, please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." Elena sat. Her hands were trembling. She folded them in her lap to hide it. 3 days ago, Morrison began, we executed arrest warrants on 7 individuals connected to the scheme your husband documented. State Senator Marcus Webb, 3 members of the school board, 2 executives from Whitmore Holdings, and the driver of the truck that killed your husband. Elena's breath caught. The driver. His name is Robert Haynes, a convicted felon with ties to organized crime. He wasn't a random trucker who fell asleep. He was a professional, paid $50,000 to make your husband's death look like an accident. The room spun. Elena gripped the edge of the table. "You're saying David was murdered, deliberately, for what he knew?" "Yes. The evidence your husband gathered at Orietta, combined with our own investigation, proves it beyond doubt. Senator Webb ordered the hit. Haynes carried it out. The money trail is clear." Elena heard the words but couldn't process them. Confirmation. Finally, the thing she had suspected, feared, desperately hoped wasn't true. David hadn't just died. David had been murdered. Will they go to prison? Webb is facing multiple federal charges: corruption, bribery, conspiracy to commit murder. If convicted, he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. Haynes has already agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Reduced sentence? He killed my husband. I understand your anger, Mrs. Hartwell, but his testimony is crucial to convicting Webb. Without it, the case becomes much harder to prove. Elena wanted to scream, wanted to flip the table, wanted to find Robert Haynes and make him understand what he had taken from her. Instead, she sat perfectly still. David would say it's the right thing to do, she said quietly. He would say the system matters more than revenge. He would say justice isn't about punishment, it's about prevention. Morrison nodded slowly. Your husband was a good man. What he did took courage. Because of him, this corruption network is destroyed. Millions of dollars that would have been stolen will now go to actual schools, actual children. He made a difference. He's not here to see it. No, but his daughter will grow up knowing her father was a hero. That matters. They talked for another hour. Details, timelines. What would happen next? Elena absorbed what she could and let the rest wash over her. At noon, she left the field office with Chen's business card and a folder full of documents she wasn't sure she'd ever read. In the parking lot, she sat in her car and cried. Not from grief this time. Not from relief. From something in between. Something that had no name. David was avenged. The people who killed him would face consequences. It was over. Except it wasn't over. It would never be over. Elena drove home exhausted beyond words and found an unfamiliar car parked in her driveway. She tensed immediately. After everything that had happened, unfamiliar vehicles meant danger. Then the driver's door opened and Michael stepped out. David's brother, looking exhausted himself, looking like he had something important to say. I tried calling, he said as Elena approached. You didn't answer. I was at the FBI office. Michael's eyebrows rose. News? Arrests. 7 of them, including the man who killed David. Michael exhaled sharply. Thank God. When did this happen? 3 days ago. They just told me. That's why I'm here. I heard rumors. Wanted to make sure you knew. Elena unlocked the front door and gestured for Michael to follow her inside. She needed to sit down, needed to think. There's something else, Michael said once they were seated in the living room. Something I found. Elena looked up. What? Michael pulled an envelope from his jacket. Old, yellowed, postmarked 1923. I've been going through family records, old boxes in Mom's attic, trying to trace our history for a project at work, and I found this. He handed her the envelope. Elena took it, frowning. What is this? Open it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, addressed to the Hartwell family, Portland, Oregon. Elena read the first few lines and stopped breathing. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, I am writing to inquire about a property that belonged to my late father, Thomas Mercer. He disappeared in the summer of 1880 while traveling from a temporary shelter to Portland. We never learned what became of him. I am his daughter, Anna Mercer Evans, and I have spent 40 years searching for answers." Elena looked up at Michael. "Where did you find this?" "In a box of old correspondence. It was sent to our great-great-grandmother. Apparently she never responded, or if she did, there's no record of it." "Do you understand what this means?" Michael shook his head. "Not entirely. You mentioned someone named Thomas Mercer when you called Mom from the ranger station. Is this connected?" "Michael?" Elena's voice was trembling. "I found his house. The shelter he built. I have his journal. His documents. Everything he left behind for his children." Michael stared at her. "That's not possible." "It's true. I spent the night in the structure he built over 140 years ago. He died there waiting for a rescue that never came. He left everything he had hoping someone would find it and deliver it to his family. And now you have it. And now I have it. And you just handed me proof that his daughter spent her whole life looking for him." The coincidence was staggering, impossible, except Elena had stopped believing in coincidence. "Anna Mercer Evans," she read aloud. "If she was searching in 1923, she might have had children by then, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. You want to find them." "I have to find them. I promised Thomas, in his house, out loud. I promised I would make sure his family knew what happened to him." Michael leaned forward. "Elena, you just survived getting lost in the wilderness. You just found out my brother was murdered. You're 7 months pregnant. Maybe this isn't the time." "This is exactly the time." Elena cut him off. "I found that house for a reason. I found the journal for a reason. And now you show up with a letter proving his daughter looked for him. That's not coincidence. I don't know what it is, but I can't ignore it." Michael studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay. What do you need?" "Help. I need help. Finding descendants. Tracing the family. I don't know how to do any of this. I work in records research, family histories. It's literally my job." "I know. That's why I'm asking." Michael smiled. It was David's smile. The same warmth, the same readiness to help. "Let's find them then, for Thomas Mercer and for David." They worked for 5 hours straight. Michael had access to genealogical databases, census records, historical archives. Elena provided the details from Thomas's journal. By 6:00 p.m. they had a breakthrough. Anna Mercer Evans had married in 1895. She had 3 children. Her son William Evans had a daughter named Ruth. Ruth had moved to Seattle in 1952. She had 2 children. One of them, a son named James, was still alive. James Evans, age 79, living in a retirement community in Tacoma, Washington, Thomas Mercer's great-great-grandson. "We found him," Elena whispered. "We actually found him." "He might not want to be contacted," Michael warned. "He's elderly. This is a lot of information to process." "He deserves to know. His family deserved to know for 140 years. I'm not going to keep the truth from him because it might be difficult." "Then call him, now, before you lose your nerve." Elena stared at the phone number Michael had written down. 10 digits. That's all that separated her from completing the promise she had made. She dialed. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello," a woman's voice, young, maybe 30s. "Hi, I'm trying to reach James Evans." "This is his granddaughter, Sarah. Can I ask who's calling?" Elena took a breath. "My name is Elena Hartwell. I have information about Mr. Evans's family, his great-great-grandfather, Thomas Mercer." Silence on the line. "Hello?" Elena said. "Are you still there?" "I'm here." Sarah's voice had changed, sharpened. "Did you say Thomas Mercer?" "Yes. He died in 1880 in a shelter he built in the Pacific Northwest. I found it. I found his journal. I found documents he left behind for his children." More silence. Then barely a whisper. "My grandfather has been searching for information about Thomas Mercer his entire life. His mother Ruth told him stories about a great-great-grandfather who disappeared, about a family mystery that was never solved." Elena closed her eyes. "It's not a mystery anymore. I know what happened. I can prove it. Can you come here tomorrow? My grandfather is..." Sarah's voice caught. "He's not well. He doesn't have much time. If you have answers, he needs to hear them. Please." "I'll be there. First thing in the morning. I promise." She hung up. Michael was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're really going to do this?" "I have to." You're 7 months pregnant, Elena. You just spent a night lost in the forest. You're exhausted. Thomas Mercer spent months building a shelter to keep his family alive. He sent his children away so they could have a better life. He died alone, waiting for a rescue that never came. And his descendant, his actual blood, is alive right now in Tacoma, dying, not knowing what happened to the man who sacrificed everything. Elena stood up, gathering the documents that journal Thomas's letter. I don't get to be tired. I don't get to be pregnant. I don't get to be any of the things that would make this easier to avoid. I made a promise, and I'm going to keep it. Michael stood too. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. David would have wanted me to look after you. This is me looking after you. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could do this alone, but she was tired of being alone. Okay, she said. We leave at 6 a.m. That night, Elena lay in bed with her hand on her belly, feeling Lily move. We're going to finish it tomorrow, she whispered. We're going to tell James Evans who his great-great-grandfather was, what he did, why he never made it to Oregon. 3 kicks. Your daddy would be proud of me. At least I hope he would. He always said the most important thing we can do is keep our promises, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. She thought about David, about the promise he had made to expose corruption, about the price he had paid. She thought about Thomas, about the promise he had made to follow his children to Oregon, about the fever that stopped him. 2 men separated by 140 years, both willing to die for what they believed in, both leaving behind evidence of their love. We're all connected, Elena murmured, across time, across death, through the promises we make and the people we make them to. Lily kicked again, once, twice, 3 times, their signal, David's signal, a message from father to daughter that transcended everything. I hear you, Elena said. Both of you, I hear you. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would finish what Thomas Mercer started. Tomorrow she would give his family the truth. And maybe finally she would understand why she had found that house in the first place. The drive to Tacoma took 2 hours and 47 minutes. Elena sat in the passenger seat of Michael's car, the folder of Thomas Mercer's documents clutched against her chest. She hadn't let go of them since leaving the house. Some part of her feared that if she set them down, they would disappear, that she would wake up and discover the whole thing had been a dream. You're quiet, Michael said at 7:15 a.m., breaking a silence that had lasted since they crossed the city limits. I'm thinking. About what? About what I'm going to say. How do you tell a dying man that his ancestor didn't abandon his family, that he spent his last days alone writing letters he knew no one would read, hiding treasures he hoped someone would find? Michael glanced at her. You tell him the truth. That's all you can do. The truth, Elena laughed softly, the truth is complicated. The truth is that Thomas Mercer built something extraordinary and it killed him. The truth is that his children lived their whole lives thinking their father forgot about them. The truth is that I stumbled into his house by accident, and now I'm driving to Tacoma to rewrite a family's history. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I keep asking myself why. Why did I find that house? Why did you find that letter? Why does any of this fit together so perfectly? Maybe it's not about why. Maybe it's about what you do with it. Elena turned to look at Michael. He had David's profile, the same strong jaw, the same way of squinting slightly when he concentrated on the road. David used to say things like that. I know, I learned it from him. They arrived at Sunrise Senior Living at 8:52 a.m. A woman was waiting in the lobby, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, anxious eyes that scanned Elena from head to foot. You're Elena Hartwell. Yes, and you must be Sarah. Sarah nodded. Her gaze dropped to Elena's pregnant belly. You didn't mention you were expecting. It didn't seem relevant. My grandfather is very weak. The doctors say he has days, maybe a week. Whatever you have to tell him, please be gentle. Elena touched the documents against her chest. I understand, but I should warn you. What I have to share isn't gentle, it's painful, and it's true. Sarah's jaw tightened. He's waited his whole life for this. Whatever it is, he can handle it. They walked through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and aging. Elena's knee still ached from the sprain, but she ignored it. Pain had become background noise. Room 147. The door was open. Inside, an old man sat in a wheelchair by the window, thin, fragile, but his eyes were sharp when he turned to look at them. Grandpa, Sarah said softly, this is Elena Hartwell. She's the one who called. James Evans studied Elena for a long moment. Then his gaze dropped to the folder in her hand. "You said you have information about Thomas Mercer." "I do. Sit down, please, and tell me everything." Elena sat in the chair beside him. Michael and Sarah stood near the door, witnesses to whatever would unfold. 3 days ago, Elena began, I got lost in the forest during a storm. I was alone, 7 months pregnant, no phone signal, no trail. I thought I was going to die. James didn't interrupt, didn't move, just listened. Then I found a structure, a wagon that had been converted into a cabin. Old, abandoned, but intact. Someone had built it to last, and it had, for over 140 years. She opened the folder and pulled out Thomas's journal. Inside, I found this. It belonged to your great-great-grandfather, Thomas Mercer. James's hand trembled as he reached for the journal. Elena placed it in his palm gently. He wrote everything down, she continued. The journey west, the decision to stop, your great-great-grandmother Margaret's illness, the winter they spent in that shelter, her death, his grief, everything. James opened the journal. His eyes moved across the faded handwriting. Elena watched tears begin to form. My mother told me stories, James whispered. Her grandmother Anna used to say that Thomas was a good man, that something terrible must have happened to keep him from coming. She never believed he abandoned them. Never. She was right. He didn't abandon anyone. Elena pulled out Thomas's final letter. He wrote this while dying. Fever took him the same way it took Margaret. He knew he wasn't going to survive. So he hid everything. The journal, the documents, the valuables. He left instructions for whoever found the house, and he wrote this letter. She handed it to James. The old man read it slowly, lips moving silently over the words. When he reached the end, he closed his eyes. Even in darkness, we build toward light, he quoted. That's what he wrote. Yes. My mother used to say something similar. We build what we hope will last. I thought she made it up. I didn't know she was quoting her grandfather. The words survived, even when the person didn't. James looked up at Elena. Tears were streaming down his face now, but he was smiling. You found him. After all these years, someone finally found him. He found me? I think that's more accurate. Sarah stepped forward. Grandpa, are you okay? Do you need anything? I need nothing. For the first time in 79 years, I have everything I need. James held up the journal. This is my family. This is who we are. This is where we came from. Elena reached into the folder again. There's more? She pulled out the land deeds, the letters of credit, the documentation Thomas had so carefully preserved. These were meant for your family. Thomas intended to bring them to Oregon himself. When he couldn't, he hid them, hoping someone would find them eventually. James's hands shook as he examined the documents. These are genuine, over 100 years old. Legal experts will need to verify them, but yes, I believe they're genuine. Land deeds, for property in Oregon. Your family's inheritance, the one Thomas never got to deliver. Sarah leaned over her grandfather's shoulder, studying the documents. Grandpa, do you understand what this means? I understand. James's voice was stronger now, clearer. I understand that my great-great-grandfather didn't forget us. He didn't abandon us. He died trying to give us a better life. That's exactly what he did. James set the documents down and took Elena's hand. His grip was weak but warm. Why did you do this? Why did you come all this way? Elena thought about the question. There were so many answers. Because she promised. Because it was right. Because Thomas deserved it. Because her own husband had died, trying to do the right thing, and she understood now what that meant. My husband was murdered 3 months ago, she said. He discovered corruption. He gathered evidence. He was killed to keep him quiet. James's eyes widened. I'm so sorry. He left things behind. Documents, evidence, a letter explaining everything, and for weeks I didn't know. I thought he just died in an accident. I didn't know he died a hero. And now you know. Now I know. Because someone made sure I would find what he left behind. Someone made sure the truth would come out. Elena squeezed the old man's hand. Thomas did the same thing. He made sure. Even when he was dying, he made sure. And you deserve to know. Your family deserved to know. James was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What was your husband's name? David. David Hartwell. David. James nodded slowly. And your daughter. What will you name her? Lily, after David's mother. Lily Hartwell. That's a beautiful name. James released her hand and turned to look out the window. My mother's name was Ruth, her mother was named Mary, and her mother was Anna, Thomas's daughter. I know, we traced the family line. 4 generations of women, raising children, keeping the family together, wondering what happened to the man who started it all. James turned back to Elena. You've answered a question that's been asked for 140 years. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't have to thank me. Just tell people. Tell them about Thomas. Tell them what he built, what he sacrificed. Make sure his story doesn't disappear again. I will, I promise. It was 10:30 a.m. when Elena and Michael left the retirement community. Sarah walked them to the car. I don't know what to say, Sarah admitted. My grandfather has been searching for information about Thomas Mercer for as long as I can remember. He spent decades writing letters, visiting archives, hiring researchers. Nothing. And then you show up with his journal. His final words. Everything. Sometimes things stay hidden until the right person comes along, Elena said. Do you believe that there's a reason? Elena touched her belly. Lily kicked. I believe that Thomas Mercer built a house that lasted 140 years. I believe I found it on the worst night of my life. I believe your grandfather deserved to know the truth before he died. Whether there's a cosmic reason for all of that, I don't know. But the outcome speaks for itself. Sarah nodded slowly. What happens now, to the house, I mean? I reported it to the County Historical Society. They're sending a team to assess it. If it's as significant as I think it is, they'll want to preserve it, document it, maybe even move it to a museum. Would they let our family be involved? I'll make sure of it. Thomas built that house for his children. His descendants should be part of whatever happens next. Sarah hugged Elena then, unexpected, fierce. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up, for keeping your promise. The drive back to Portland felt shorter than the drive up. Elena sat with her hand on her belly, feeling Lily move, watching the landscape blur past. That was intense, Michael said at 11:45 a.m. Yeah. Are you okay? Elena considered the question. Was she okay? She had spent a night lost in the wilderness. She had found a century-old secret. She had learned her husband was murdered. She had met a dying man and rewritten his family's history. I don't know if okay is the right word, she said finally. I'm something. I'm not sure what. David would be proud of you. You think so. I know so. He always said you were the strongest person he knew. He wasn't wrong. Elena turned to look at Michael. He said the same thing about you, you know. No, he didn't. He did, when you were going through your divorce. He said Michael acts like everything's fine, but he's falling apart inside. Doesn't matter. He'll survive. He's the strongest person I know. Michael's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He never told me that. He wasn't good at saying things out loud. He was better at doing, at showing up, at being there. Yeah, he was. They drove in silence for a while longer. Then Michael said, What do you want to do about the house, Thomas's house, I mean? I want to make sure it's preserved. Properly, with his story attached to it. I don't want it to become just another artifact in some museum basement. How do you plan to do that? I'm going to call the Historical Society when we get back, arrange a meeting, tell them everything I know. And the valuables, the coins, the jewelry. I left them in the house, hidden. I didn't feel right taking them. Michael glanced at her. They're valuable, probably worth a lot of money. They're not mine. They belong to Thomas's family. Once the site is properly documented, James's family can decide what to do with them. At 1:15 p.m., they pulled into Elena's driveway. She was exhausted. Bone-deep tired in a way she hadn't felt since the days immediately after David's death. Will you be okay alone? Michael asked. I'm not alone. Elena touched her belly. I have Lily. You know what I mean. I know, and yes, I'll be okay. I need to rest, process everything, figure out what comes next. She climbed out of the car, then leaned back in through the window. Thank you, Michael, for coming with me, for helping me find James, for everything. That's what family does. Elena watched him drive away. Then she walked inside and collapsed on the couch. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Hartwell, this is Patricia Chen from the Cascade County Historical Society. We need to talk, urgently. Can you call me? Elena frowned. She'd given her contact information to the ranger station, but she hadn't expected to hear from the Historical Society so quickly. She dialed the number. Patricia answered on the first ring. Mrs. Hartwell, thank you for calling back. Is something wrong? Not wrong exactly, but we've done some preliminary research based on your report. The location you described, the wagon structure, we cross-referenced it with historical records from the 1880s. And there's a problem. Several problems, actually. Elena's heart rate increased. What kind of problems? The land where you found the structure, it's not public property, it's privately owned, has been for over a century. By who? A company called Pacific Northwest Holdings. They purchased it in 1952 as part of a larger acquisition. Elena sat up straighter. Okay, so we need their permission to access the site. That's the first problem. The second problem is that Pacific Northwest Holdings was dissolved in 1987. Their assets were absorbed by another company. That company was Whitmore Holdings. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Whitmore Holdings. The same company David had been investigating. The same company connected to the corruption that got him killed. That can't be a coincidence, Elena said. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not. What I know is that the land where Thomas Mercer's house sits is technically owned by people who are currently under federal investigation. Elena's mind raced. David had uncovered corruption at Whitmore Holdings. Financial fraud, embezzlement. And now somehow that same company owned the land where she had found Thomas Mercer's shelter. Mrs. Hartwell, are you still there? I'm here. I'm just processing. There's more. When I looked into the property records, I found something strange. The land has never been developed, never been logged, never been touched. In fact, there's a notation in the file from 1975 indicating that the property should be left undisturbed. What does that mean? I don't know. But someone at some point made a deliberate decision to leave that land alone, to preserve whatever was on it. Elena thought about the wagon house, intact after 140 years, hidden in a forest that no one had touched. Someone had known. Someone had protected it. I need to talk to someone, Elena said. Someone who might have answers. Who? Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. She's handling the investigation into Whitmore Holdings. The FBI. It's a long story, but I think whatever's happening here goes deeper than a historical discovery. I think this might be connected to my husband's murder. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mrs. Hartwell, I don't know what you're involved in, but please be careful. Historical research is my job. Criminal investigations are not. I understand. Thank you for the information. Elena hung up and immediately dialed Agent Chen. Voicemail? Of course. Agent Chen, this is Elena Hartwell. I need to speak with you urgently. I've discovered something about Whitmore Holdings. Something connected to a property in the Cascade Mountains. Please call me back as soon as possible. She hung up and sat in the silence of her living room, mind racing. David had been investigating Whitmore Holdings. Financial fraud, corruption. Whitmore Holdings owned land where a 140-year-old shelter had been deliberately left undisturbed. Elena had gotten lost in a storm and stumbled directly onto that land. Was it possible that David had known about this? Was it possible that his investigation had led him here to this exact piece of forest, to this exact secret? She grabbed her laptop and opened it with trembling fingers. David's files. The ones the FBI had copied but not taken. She still had access to everything he had gathered. She searched for Whitmore Holdings. Pages of documents appeared. Financial records. Meeting minutes. Property inventories. And they're buried in a spreadsheet from 2019. She found it. A property code. WH Cascade 1952. With a notation in David's handwriting. Why would they hold this? No development. No revenue. What are they protecting? David had noticed. He had asked the question. But he had died before finding the answer. Elena's phone rang at 3:47 p.m. Agent Chen. Mrs. Hartwell, I got your message. What's this about Whitmore Holdings? Elena explained everything. The land ownership, the deliberate preservation, David's note in the files. Chen was quiet for a long moment when she finished. This is unexpected, the agent said finally. Do you know something? Something you're not telling me. I can't discuss active investigations. My husband died because of this. Someone tried to kill me too, even if they didn't know it. I got lost on property owned by the same people who ordered David murdered. That's not coincidence. Mrs. Hartwell, sir, please. If you know something, anything, I need to understand. Chen sighed. I'm going to tell you something off the record. You didn't hear it from me. Okay? Whitmore Holdings has been under investigation for 15 years. Not just for financial fraud, for something bigger: money laundering, tax evasion, and real estate manipulation. What does that mean? It means they've been buying up properties across the Pacific Northwest for decades. Properties with no apparent value, no development potential, just land. Thousands of acres of land. Why would they do that? We don't know. That's what David was trying to figure out. He noticed the pattern, started asking questions, started digging. Elena's blood ran cold. And that's why they killed him. We believe so. He got too close to something. We just don't know what. I think I might. Elena told her about Thomas Mercer, about the wagon house, about the land that had been left undisturbed for 70 years. You think this is connected? Chen asked. I think someone at Whitmore Holdings knew that property contained something valuable, something historical, and instead of developing it or reporting it, they bought the land and left it alone. Why would a corrupt financial company care about historical preservation? I don't know, but someone wrote a note in 1975 saying that property should be left undisturbed. Someone knew what was out there. Chen was quiet again. Then she said, I need to make some calls. Can you send me everything you have, the documents, the property records, David's notes? Yes. And Mrs. Hartwell, be careful. If you're right about this, there may be people who don't want this information to come out, people who are still free. Elena thought about the storm, the confusion, the way she had wandered for hours before finding the wagon house. Had that really been an accident, or had someone been watching at 5:30 p.m.? Michael called. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. Elena grabbed the remote. Channel 8. A reporter stood in front of a familiar building, the Whitmore Holdings corporate headquarters. Breaking developments in what prosecutors are calling one of the largest corruption cases in Oregon history. Senator Marcus Webb, already facing multiple federal charges, has now been connected to a decades-long scheme involving land acquisition and historical artifact trafficking. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Did you hear that? Michael asked. Artifact trafficking. I heard it. Elena, the news is saying that Whitmore Holdings has been secretly buying up properties containing historical artifacts for decades. They've been looting them, selling them on the black market, all while pretending to be legitimate businessmen. The wagon house. The valuables hidden under the floor. They knew, Elena whispered. They knew about Thomas Mercer's house. They were going to loot it. And David found out. And David found out. That's why they killed him. Not just because of the financial fraud, because of this. Because of what they were doing to places like that house. The reporter continued, federal agents are now searching multiple properties owned by Whitmore Holdings. Historians believe that dozens of significant historical sites may have been deliberately concealed and looted over the past 50 years. Elena sank back into the couch. David hadn't just uncovered corruption. He had uncovered a conspiracy. A systematic effort to erase history for profit, and he had died trying to stop it. At 7:00 p.m., Agent Chen called again. Mrs. Hartwell, I owe you an apology. For what? For underestimating how deep this goes. Your husband's investigation didn't just expose financial fraud, it exposed an entire operation. Whitmore Holdings has been identifying historical properties, purchasing them quietly, and either looting them or keeping them hidden until they could be exploited. How is that even possible? Wouldn't historians notice? Not if you own the land, not if you control access, not if you have enough money and influence to make sure no one asks questions. And Thomas Mercer's house, we believe it was flagged for recovery in 1975. Someone at the company identified its potential value, but before they could act, the operation was interrupted by internal disputes. The property fell through the cracks. For 50 years. Sometimes bureaucracy is a preservationist's best friend. Elena almost laughed. So the only reason Thomas's house survived is because the criminals who owned the land got distracted. That appears to be the case. Ironic, isn't it? Ironic isn't the word I'd use. Chen cleared her throat. There's something else. We've connected Senator Webb directly to the artifact trafficking operation. He was using his political influence to block investigations to steer regulatory oversight away from Whitmore properties. He was protecting them. Yes. And when David started asking questions, Webb saw him as a threat, not just to the financial scheme, but to the entire operation. Elena closed her eyes. That's why he had David killed, to protect an empire built on stolen history. Yes. And now? Now it's falling apart. Webb is facing additional charges. His co-conspirators are turning on each other. The artifact trafficking operation is being exposed. Properties across the Pacific Northwest are being identified and protected. Because of David. Because of David, and because of you. Me. You found that house, Mrs. Hartwell. You brought it to attention. If you hadn't, it might have remained hidden forever. Or worse, it might have been looted once things calmed down. Elena thought about the storm. The terror. The moment she had fallen through that door praying for survival. I didn't plan any of this. The best discoveries rarely are planned. Shh. After the call, Elena sat alone in the darkness of her living room. Everything had changed. Everything made sense now. David had stumbled onto something massive. He had started pulling at threads, and those threads led to a conspiracy that spanned decades. His death wasn't random. It was calculated. It was ordered by people who valued profit over history, greed over truth. And somehow, impossibly, Elena had finished what he started. Not by investigating, not by gathering evidence, but by getting lost, by surviving, by keeping a promise to a dead man. Lily kicked. 3 times. I know, Elena whispered. Your daddy would say it's not over yet. There's still work to do. She picked up her phone and dialed the Historical Society. Patricia, it's Elena Hartwell. I need to arrange something, a meeting, with everyone involved. FBI, historians, Thomas Mercer's family, everyone who has a stake in what happens next. What do you have in mind? I want to make sure that house is protected. Properly, legally, forever. I want Thomas Mercer's story told. I want his family to finally have closure. And I want my husband's sacrifice to mean something. That's ambitious. I've had an ambitious few days. Patricia laughed softly. When do you want to do this? Elena looked at her belly. 8 months now. Time was running short. As soon as possible, before my daughter arrives. I want this finished before she's born. Then we better get started. Elena hung up and sat back. Outside, night had fallen. Stars appeared one by one through the window. Somewhere in the Cascade Mountains, a wagon house sat in darkness. A house built by a man who refused to give up. A house that had waited 140 years for someone to find it. Thomas Mercer had built toward light. Now it was Elena's turn. 3 weeks passed in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and preparations. Elena's belly grew larger. Her back ached constantly. Sleep came in fragments between bathroom trips and anxious dreams. But she refused to slow down. The Historical Society had assembled a team. Archaeologists, preservationists, historians specializing in Pacific Northwest frontier history. They had surveyed the wagon house site, documented every detail, and unanimously agreed on its significance. This is one of the most complete frontier survival structures ever discovered, Patricia Chen told Elena during a conference call on November 15th. The level of preservation is extraordinary, the engineering is remarkable, and the personal artifacts, the journal, the documents, they transform it from a curiosity into a story. What happens next? That's what we need to discuss. The property is still technically owned by Whitmore Holdings, which is now under federal receivership. The government has agreed to transfer ownership to a nonprofit trust, but there are legal complications. What kind of complications for Senator Webb's lawyers are fighting the asset seizure? They're arguing that the artifact trafficking charges are unproven, that the property acquisitions were legitimate business transactions. Elena's jaw tightened. They're trying to keep it. They're trying to delay. Every day the legal battle continues is a day that site remains unprotected. Can't the FBI do something? They're doing everything they can, but the courts move slowly. Justice moves slowly. Elena hung up feeling frustrated and helpless. She had kept her promise to Thomas Mercer. She had found his family. She had told his story. But now the system that was supposed to protect his legacy was being manipulated by the same people who had killed her husband. At 8:30 p.m. that evening, Agent Chen called. Mrs. Hartwell, there's been a development. Elena sat up straighter. Good or bad? Good, very good. Robert Haynes. The man who killed your husband, he's agreed to expand his testimony. Expand how? He's implicating Webb in the artifact trafficking operation directly. Not just financial fraud, not just conspiracy, active participation. Webb personally directed the looting of at least 3 historical sites. Haynes has documentation. Elena's heart raced. What does that mean for the case? It means Webb's legal position just became untenable. His lawyers are already talking plea deal, and more importantly, it means the asset seizure is likely to be upheld. The property, Thomas's house, will be transferred to the nonprofit trust within weeks, not months. Weeks. Elena closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she felt something like hope. Thank you for telling me. You deserve to know. This case wouldn't exist without your husband, and it wouldn't have reached this point without you. November 23rd, 2 days before Thanksgiving. Elena sat in the conference room of the Oregon Historical Society surrounded by people who had become unexpectedly important in her life. Patricia Chen from Cascade County, Agent Morrison from the FBI, Michael, who had taken time off work to support her, and James Evans's granddaughter Sarah representing the Mercer family descendants. The transfer is complete, Patricia announced. As of 9 o'clock this morning, the property containing Thomas Mercer's wagon house is officially owned by the Pacific Northwest Historical Preservation Trust. Applause rippled around the table. Elena felt tears threatening but held them back. What happens now? She asked. Now we plan. The structure needs to be stabilized before winter. We're proposing a temporary shelter to protect it while we assess options for long-term preservation. Move it or leave it? That's the question. There are arguments for both. Leaving it in place preserves authenticity. Moving it allows public access and protects it from future weather damage. Sarah leaned forward. My grandfather had an opinion on this before he passed. The room went quiet. James Evans had died on November 18th, 5 days after Elena's visit. Peacefully, in his sleep, with his family around him and Thomas Mercer's journal in his hands. He said he wanted the house moved, preserved, displayed where people could see it. Sarah's voice wavered. He said Thomas built it to survive, to outlast him, to matter beyond his own life. Leaving it in the forest would be hiding it all over again. Elena nodded slowly. Thomas wrote something similar in his journal. He believed what he built would mean something to someone else someday. I think moving it honors that. Patricia made a note. We'll proceed with relocation plans. The Oregon Pioneer Museum has offered to host the exhibit. They have space, they have resources, and they're committed to telling Thomas's story alongside the structure. How long until it's ready? Spring, early April if everything goes according to plan. Elena touched her belly. Lily kicked, hard. I'll be there, she said. We both will. November 28th, Thanksgiving. Elena spent the holiday at Margaret's house. David's mother had insisted. Family should be together, she said, especially now. The house was full. David's sister and her children, Michael and his new girlfriend, cousins Elena barely knew, everyone talking, laughing, eating, pretending that the empty chair at the table wasn't the loudest thing in the room. After dinner, Elena escaped to the back porch. The night air was cold but clear. She needed space, needed silence. Margaret found her 10 minutes later. You're freezing out here. I needed a break. I know. Margaret sat down beside her. It's strange, isn't it, being surrounded by people and still feeling alone? David should be here. Yes, he should. Margaret was quiet for a moment. I keep expecting him to walk through the door, say something funny, make everyone laugh. He was good at that. He was good at a lot of things. Margaret turned to look at Elena, including choosing his wife. Elena felt tears finally spill over. I miss him so much. I know, sweetheart, I know. They sat together in the cold, two women bound by grief and filed in love, and watching their breath form clouds in the darkness. He would be proud of you, Margaret said eventually. What you've done, finding that house, helping that family, fighting for justice. I didn't do it for recognition. That's exactly why he'd be proud. You did it because it was right. Because someone needed to. That's the woman he fell in love with. Elena wiped her eyes. I'm scared, Margaret. Of what? Of being a mother, of doing it alone, of screwing everything up. Margaret took her hand. Every mother is scared. Every parent doubts themselves. But you won't be alone. You have me. You have Michael. You have an entire family that loves you. It's not the same. No, it's not the same. It will never be the same, but it will be enough, because you will make it enough. That's what mothers do. December 8th, 3:47 a.m. Elena woke to a sensation she didn't immediately recognize. A tightening, a pressure, different from Lily's usual movements. Then it happened again. Stronger this time. Oh God, Elena whispered. Oh God, not yet. It's too early. She was 37 weeks. Early, but not dangerously so. The doctor had warned her this might happen. Stress, exertion, the body deciding it was time. She grabbed her phone and dialed Margaret. "Elena, what's wrong?" "I think I'm in labor." "I'm on my way. Don't move. Don't panic. Just breathe." Elena hung up and focused on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the technique David had taught her. Another contraction hit. She gripped the bedsheet and counted through it. "Okay, Lily," she gasped when it passed. "Okay, I guess you're ready to meet the world." 3 kicks, faint but insistent. I know. Let's do this together." Margaret arrived at 4:15 a.m., Michael right behind her. "Can you walk?" Margaret asked. "I think so." "Then let's go. Hospital, now." The drive took 12 minutes. Elena counted contractions the whole way, 7 minutes apart, then 6, then 5. By the time they reached the emergency entrance, she was struggling to speak through the pain. "Breathe, Elena. Just breathe." "I'm trying. It hurts." I know it hurts, but you're strong. You're the strongest person I know." The hospital became a blur of fluorescent lights and concerned faces. Nurses asking questions, doctors examining her, someone attaching monitors, someone else starting an IV. At 5:30 a.m., Elena was moved to a delivery room. "You're progressing fast," the doctor said. "This baby wants to come. Is she okay? Is she healthy?" "Everything looks perfect. Strong heartbeat. Good position. You're doing great, Mrs. Hartwell." The contractions intensified. Elena gripped Margaret's hand hard enough to leave bruises. "I can't do this. I can't. It's too much." "Yes, you can. You survived a night lost in a storm. You survived losing David. You can survive this." "That was different." "No, it was exactly the same. You put one foot in front of the other. You refuse to give up. That's all labor is. One contraction at a time. One push at a time." At 7:23 a.m., the doctor announced she was fully dilated. "Time to push, Elena. Are you ready?" "No." "That's okay. Push anyway." The next 47 minutes were the hardest of Elena's life. Harder than the storm, harder than the grief, harder than anything she had ever endured. But then at 8:10 a.m. on December 8th, she heard it, a cry, high and thin and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl, the doctor announced. "Congratulations, Mom." Elena sobbed as they placed Lily on her chest. Tiny, wrinkled, red-faced and screaming, the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Hi, baby," Elena whispered. "Hi, Lily. I'm your mom." Lily's crying softened. Her unfocused eyes seemed to search for the source of the voice. "Your daddy isn't here. I'm so sorry. He wanted to be. He wanted to meet you more than anything. But I'm here. I'll always be here. And I promise you I will tell you everything about him. Every story, every memory, every reason why he loved you before he ever saw your face." Lily yawned, tiny fingers curled around Elena's thumb. "That's our signal," Elena said through her tears. "Your daddy used to tap my belly 3 times. Our secret code. I'll teach it to you. And whenever you need him, whenever you miss him, you just tap 3 times. He'll hear you. Wherever he is, he'll hear you." Margaret stood at the edge of the room, crying silently. Michael had stepped outside, unable to watch. But Elena was no longer alone. She had her daughter, she had her family, she had a reason to keep going. And somewhere she knew David was watching. 3 weeks later. December 29th. Elena sat in the rocking chair in Lily's nursery, feeding her daughter while the morning light crept through the curtains. The room was exactly as David had designed it. Yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile of stars and moons hanging over the crib. "Your daddy picked this color," Elena told Lily. "He said it reminded him of sunshine. He wanted you to wake up every morning feeling warm even in winter." Lily continued nursing, oblivious to the story, but somehow Elena thought absorbing it anyway. The phone rang. Elena answered carefully, keeping Lily steady. "Mrs. Hartwell, this is Patricia Chen." "Patricia, happy holidays." "Same to you. I'm calling with news. The wagon house has been successfully transported to the Oregon Pioneer Museum. It arrived yesterday, intact, undamaged." Elena's heart swelled. Already? The weather cooperated. The team worked faster than expected. They wanted it done before the new year. "When can I see it?" "That's why I'm calling. We're planning a private preview for next week, before the public opening in April. We'd like you to be there. You and Lily." "We'll come. Absolutely." "There's something else. The museum has agreed to our proposal for the exhibit. It won't just be the structure. It will be the entire story. Thomas, Margaret, the children, the journey west, the decision to stop, everything. Including what happened after how I found it." including that. Your story is part of his story now. They're connected. The museum wants to show that, how the past reaches into the present, how promises survive across generations. Elena looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep with milk still on her lips. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. Thank me by being there. This belongs to you as much as anyone. January 5th, 10:00 a.m. The Oregon Pioneer Museum occupied a beautiful building in Portland's Cultural District. Elena had passed it dozens of times without ever going inside. Now she stood at the entrance with Lily in a carrier against her chest, heart pounding. Michael was beside her, Margaret too, and Sarah Evans, who had flown in from Tacoma for the preview. Ready? Michael asked. No. Good. Let's go anyway. Inside, they were greeted by the museum director, a tall woman with silver hair and kind eyes. Mrs. Hartwell, welcome. We're honored to have you. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for finding it, for bringing it to us. They walked through quiet halls past exhibits Elena barely noticed until they reached a large room at the back of the building. And there it was, Thomas Mercer's wagon house, reassembled, restored, standing in the center of the room exactly as it had stood in the forest. Elena stopped breathing. Oh my God, she whispered. The walls she had touched in desperation were now illuminated by careful lighting. The stove she had lit following century-old instructions now sat cold but pristine. The shelves that had held Thomas's possessions were arranged with the artifacts he had left behind. And on the wall beside the structure, enlarged and framed, were pages from his journal, his words preserved, his story told. It's perfect, Elena said. It's absolutely perfect. The museum director smiled. Would you like to go inside? Can I? This is your preview. You can do anything you want. Elena approached the door. The same door she had pushed through in the storm. The same door that had saved her life. She opened it and stepped inside. The interior was exactly as she remembered. Smaller than she'd thought. More intimate. But every detail was there. The markings near the stove. The hidden floor panel now covered with protective glass. The window where morning light had streamed in after the storm. Hello, Thomas, Elena said softly. I kept my promise. Your house is safe now. Your story will be told, and your family knows. James knew. Before he died, he knew you never abandoned them. Lily stirred against her chest, made a small sound. This is my daughter, Elena continued. Lily, her father was a man like you, a man who did the right thing even when it was dangerous, a man who left things behind so others could finish what he started. She touched the wall gently. You built this place to survive. You said in your letter that the human spirit endures. You were right. It does. Across generations. Across centuries. We carry each other forward. Outside, Sarah was crying. Margaret held Michael's hand. The museum director wiped her eyes and pretended she wasn't. Elena emerged from the wagon house with Lily against her heart and tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she said to everyone and no one. Thank you for believing this mattered. April 15th, the public opening. The line stretched around the block. Hundreds of people waiting to see the wagon house. Waiting to learn Thomas Mercer's story. Inside, Elena stood near the exhibit entrance accepting congratulations from strangers who had read about her in the newspaper. The story had gone viral. The pregnant widow who got lost in a storm and discovered a century-old secret. The connection to a murdered husband and a corruption scandal. The family reunited across generations. People loved it. They called it fate. They called it a miracle. Elena called it a promise kept. At 2:00 p.m. a ceremony began. Elena was asked to speak. She stood before the crowd, slid out Lily in her arms, and tried to find words. I didn't plan any of this, she began. I got lost in a forest. I was scared. I was alone. I thought I was going to die. The room was silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on her. Then I found a door. And behind that door was a house built by a man named Thomas Mercer, a man who lost his wife, who sent his children away so they could have a better life, who stayed behind and died alone, still hoping he could reach them. She paused, swallowing hard. Thomas wrote something in his final letter. He said, even in darkness we build toward light. I didn't understand what that meant. When I first read it, I was too cold, too scared, too focused on survival. She looked down at Lily, who was watching her with wide, curious eyes. But I understand now. Building toward light doesn't mean ignoring the darkness. It means refusing to let the darkness win. It means doing what needs to be done even when it's hard, even when you're alone, even when you're not sure anyone will ever benefit from your effort. Her voice strengthened. My husband David understood that. He found corruption, and he fought it. He gathered evidence, and he shared it. He died because he refused to stay silent. And because of what he did, dozens of historical sites will be protected. Criminals will face justice. The truth will survive. She looked around the room at the faces watching her. Thomas Mercer built this house 144 years ago. He built it with his own hands. He poured his grief into the wood, his hope into the engineering, his love into every beam and joint. And then he hid everything he valued beneath the floor and wrote a letter for whoever might come next. Elena turned to face the wagon house. I was the one who came next. Me, a widow, a mother, a woman who got lost and found something she wasn't looking for. That's how it works sometimes. We don't choose our purposes. They choose us. She turned back to the crowd. I'm telling you this because I want you to remember it. Not just Thomas's story. Not just David's story. Your own story. Whatever darkness you're facing, whatever loss you're carrying, you have the power to build toward light. You have the power to leave something behind that matters. Something that might save someone else a decade from now, a century from now, long after you're gone. She held Lily closer. This is my daughter. Her name is Lily. She will never meet her father, but she will know who he was. She will know what he did. And someday she will stand in front of this wagon house and understand that the past is never really past, that the people who came before us are still with us, that the promises we make matter even if we're not the ones who get to keep them. Elena took a breath. Thomas Mercer kept his promise. David kept his promise. I kept mine. And I believe with everything I have that if we keep building toward light, the darkness will never win. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Elena barely heard it. She was looking at the wagon house, at the structure that had saved her life, at the legacy of a man she had never met but would never forget. We did it, Thomas, she whispered. We did it. 6 months later. October. Elena stood in the forest, clearing Lily on her hip, staring at the empty space where the wagon house had once stood. A small marker had been placed here, a bronze plaque embedded in stone. On this site stood the Mercer Wagon House, built 1879-1880 by Thomas Mercer, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and love, relocated to the Oregon Pioneer Museum 2025. Below that, a second inscription found by Elena Hartwell during a storm October 2024. Some shelters protect more than bodies. They protect hope. Elena knelt beside the marker, Lily babbling in her arms. This is where I found you, she told her daughter. This exact spot. The door was right there. I fell through it soaking wet, terrified, sure I was going to lose you. Lily reached for a leaf. But the house was here, Thomas's house, and it held, just like he built it to, just like he promised it would. Elena touched the plaque. Your daddy led me here. I know that now. He was investigating Whitmore Holdings. He found documents about this property. He was following the same trail Thomas followed 144 years earlier. Different era, different journey, same destination. Lily found the leaf and examined it with serious intensity. 2 men, both fighting for something bigger than themselves, both leaving evidence behind so others could finish what they started, both trusting that someone would come. Elena stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. I came, I finished it, and now I'm passing the story to you. She kissed Lily's forehead. Someday when you're old enough, I'll bring you to the museum. I'll show you the house. I'll tell you everything, about Thomas, about your father, about the night I thought I lost you and found something extraordinary instead. Lily yawned. But for now, let's go home. We have a lot of living to do, a lot of light to build toward. Elena walked out of the clearing without looking back. The forest stood silent behind her, keeping its secrets, waiting for whoever might come next. Because that's what forests do. That's what houses do. That's what stories do. They wait. They endure. They survive. And when the right person finally arrives, they open their doors and say, Welcome, we've been expecting you. Elena Hartwell drove home with her daughter sleeping peacefully in the back seat. The road stretched ahead, familiar and unknown, full of challenges she couldn't predict and joys she couldn't imagine. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had learned something in Thomas Mercer's wagon house, something that no amount of planning or preparation could teach. The darkness always comes. The storms always arrive. The losses pile up until they seem unbearable. But we build anyway. We hope anyway. We love anyway. We leave doors unlocked for strangers. We write letters to people we'll never meet. We hide our treasures and trust that someone someday will find them. That's the human spirit. That's what Thomas meant. Even in darkness, we build toward light. Elena had built her light, a daughter, a legacy, a story that would be told for generations. And somewhere she knew David was watching. Somewhere Thomas was watching too. Two men separated by a century and a half, united by the same simple truth. Love survives. Hope survives. The things we build with our hearts survive longest of all. Lily Hartwell would grow up knowing that. She would carry it forward. And someday, when she had her own children, her own storms, her own darkness to face, she would remember. She would remember the wagon house. She would remember the promise. And she would build toward light exactly as her father had, exactly as Thomas Mercer had, exactly as her mother had taught her, because that is what we do. That is all we can do. And it is enough. It is always, always enough.